Hey guys, welcome to the shop. And today I want to go into a little greater detail about this grinder that I got. New to me, but by no means a new machine. But so far I'm pleasantly surprised at what I found, and I want to show you some of those things. I want to show you some of the features of this machine and some of its functions. So come on in and we'll get started. Now, for those who didn't watch the first video, this is my new to me KO Lee model BA860 universal cutter grinder. And everything on this machine articulates or rotates in some fashion. The head moves up and down. This cutter head swivels. This cutter head slides in and out. And of course the table moves in and out, left and right. So it's a really neat machine and will allow us to do all kinds of, custom cutter grinding. Because that's what this is, a universal cutter grinder. Not a surface grinder. Although you can do some small parts on it, this machine was not designed for surface grinding. Now, so far what I found with this machine is that everything looks to be in really good condition. When I went and got it, I looked at it and it was really dirty, but I gave a quick look at all the fasteners and stuff, and I noticed that none of them had looked like they'd ever had vice grips on them or the wrong wrench. I didn't see any hammer marks on the table because these things can get sticky after a lot of use. They get a lot of grinding grit build up, and they'll get really sticky, and people oftentimes will put apprentice marks on them with a hammer. The table is not all beat up on this machine, but I noticed that it was really sticky. The table was moving back and forth and left and right and all that. But I looked up under it, just felt up under it with my fingers and stuff, and I didn't feel any deep score marks or anything. And I drove a long way to get this thing, so it was coming home with me no matter what, even if it was just for the parts and pieces. But so far, what I've found is that this machine looks to be in really good condition. It's not new by any stretch, but it is in really good condition. And I want to show you a few of the things that I found. Now, if you look at this, this is a dog driver. It goes in the back of this, or in the front of this driver. This is an electronic driver that spins. You can change pulley positions and change the speed of its rotation, or you can take this motor off altogether and operate this by hand. Right now it has a C5 or a 5C. I always call them C5s, but it's 5C collet attachment in it right now. And I'm looking inside here, and there is basically no wear in it. And I look at the handles and still got all the original paint basically on it. So that shows me that this unit has been used very, very little. All the bolting positions where you would clamp this thing to the table may have looked like they've had one bolt in them, at one time. The paint is just barely chipped. I'm going to get you in a little closer. I want to show you the bottom of this unit. Alright, now I haven't cleaned this up at all. This is exactly the way I got it. And it still has the original paint from where this was painted. Now, this is a professional job. This piece has never been painted other than once. So I'm noticing that it's not got any wear. None on the keys, none on the face. So that tells me that this unit, this being a grinder, you're always going to get grinding dust up under them. Grinders are notorious for eating themselves because they produce abrasive dust that gets everywhere and on everything. So this tells me that this unit, at least this driver, has been used very little, if any, really. And I'm pretty happy about that. I mean, something like this is a really nice addition to have with something like an OD or a cutter grinder. So that was a pretty neat find. And if I look into the C5 taper, it looks to be like new. They're keyed. This one's keyed, so you're always going to have little lines that develop from the splits in the. At least that's my experience. You always see the little lines in the wore into the taper here from just general use. I'm not seeing any abrasion on here or anything, so I really believe this is basically a brand new old unit. It's pretty dirty right now because I think it's just set the majority of its life, but it feels really good and smooth. And the switch is a little crusty on it. You can't see it, but let me get you up here and show you. The switch is a little crusty, and it's a 2-position switch, so I'm going to need to get some more switches. The switch on top of this machine up here feels pretty good, but it needs some of these rubber seals on it, because grinding dust will get up in that and abrade the switch. So I'll probably replace these switches, and I had a viewer send me some 1-position switches on off, but he sent a bunch with these little rubber seals, and I thought that was great. So now I just need to find me some 2-position switches and replace those, because the wiring also will need replaced. So all the electronics on this machine, which is very little, but will need to be replaced, because you can't be using stuff like that. I mean, look, you can just, that's a fire, hazard waiting to happen. So we're going to have to replace the wires on that, and we may get into that. I'm not for sure. But let me show you a couple more things about this machine. All right, now here's a couple more. This is the dog driver, and you can see, I mentioned this in the last video, but it's still got all the original paint. It's dirty, but all the original paint inside the pulleys. And if I was guessing, I would say this was used one time due to a little bit of wear right there. It may have drove one dog in its life, so I'm excited about that. Pretty nice piece. A little couple lines there probably where it was put in where these tapers meet, but it's a nice driver. Now here's a couple more items. You can see that the paint is barely chipped around where you would mount these to the table. That doesn't mean that this machine wasn't used for a different function quite a bit, but I'm just saying that the accessories for this machine look to be in really good condition. I don't think that this radius stressor has ever been used. Not even once, I don't think. It doesn't look it. So that's a pretty neat unit. Little adjustable in height, and just put a radius on a wheel. So, pretty neat, but like I said, nowhere. Alright, now here's an item that I don't know what it is, and I want to give you guys a little better look at it. Maybe some of you guys can, chime in and tell me what it is. I'm sure somebody out there knows, but I don't. These little adapters just slide in there, and I don't know what you would put on that, but it's obviously some sort of, articulating fixture. It has 2 articulation points, here, and a little lock to lock these guys in. So, a neat unit, but I don't know what it is, so anybody knows what that is, chime in. Now the table on this machine has 2 speeds, which I thought was pretty neat, and it took me a minute to kind of figure it out, and I'm still actually figuring it out. Now this is the fast movement, and then push it in, and then it's got a gear reduction. So I guess there's just a planetary gear in here that rotates. Now this machine has a rack and pinion I've noticed that a lot of really nice grinders tend to have, I think, a belt system, and I think that's to keep from transferring the cogging of the gears into your cut. And I believe, it's just to give you a nicer cut. But this is a rack and pinion system, and I can actually kind of feel it in the table. So I think that's why that they do the belt, is to eliminate that chattering. But it's really super smooth. I don't know why it seems to be more. Maybe it's just because I'm going through another gear set, but this seems to be in just the fast speed, super smooth by hand. I mean, I'm just guessing here, but it seems like this is going to be a really nice unit. It has metal shields in here. That I don't know if you can hear that. Kind of sounds gritty. But I pulled those out and put them back in, and they're just little metal shields that keep grit and dirt from getting up into the ways of these machines. They just little tabs that bend over and you can slide them out. So that's what's making that noise. And this machine doesn't have a gib or anything. I'm so used to big heavy machinery and robust pieces of equipment that I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, man, it's not really built that heavy. But where it's a grinder and the cutting forces are so low, I'm assuming that it just doesn't need it. I don't have any experience with grinders. I'm not I've never run a grinder other than a surface grinder twice for a few minutes. So I have no experience with these types of machines, but I've learned a lot about this machine in the last couple days, and it's actually a really good quality machine. It's well thought out, seems to be, and well put together. The table will rotate. I said in the last video 15 degrees, but I did put a memo up, that it will rotate 90, and you can take these are tapered, little tapered pins. Let's see if you're in frame. Yeah. These are just little tapered pins that slide down in these little holes here. And for your fine adjustment, back one out, move it just a little to dial it in. Or you can just take those out altogether, and this will rotate. It will rotate 90 degrees. So that's pretty neat, and it's a coolant-friendly table. So this machine does not have a coolant pump, no sump or anything. It does have a drain and has some holes in the table, so you can run coolant. I had mentioned that I want to get a evacuation system for grinding, because you got to really be careful with grinding some of these metals. They can be toxic and cause you big problems. So I want to get some sort of evacuation system. This is not a dust collection friendly shield. It does not have a port on it, so I probably will put one of those on it and come up with some sort of system where I can put a dust evacuation thing outside, so I don't have to listen to it all the time. But I definitely want to get one, and I will. So that's another neat thing. This is your in and out, of course, right to left, and this down here, which you can't really see, moves the column up and down. And it's got quite a bit of movement, probably 6 or 8 inches at least, maybe even a foot of column rise. And like I said, the head pivots almost, well, it will pivot 360 degrees if you don't hit anything. You loosen these 2 set screws over here, and then this whole unit slides in and out. Get the right Allen wrench. I already took this apart, the sliding surfaces here, and cleaned them because they were full of grind and grit. But you can see it pivots and slides. It also has these little arbors, and I'm assuming that you can take this wheel off and this arbor, and this will slide in, and you can do, you know, ID grinding, or really small, running really small wheels or stuff like that, which is really neat. And I got one for small 1/4-inch shank wheels, and then I got this arbor here, which is for your larger wheels. Alright, so here's our graduations on the end of this table. This outside scale is in degrees, and the inside is in taper per foot. Got a little mark right there, and a little mark in here for the inside scale. Man, them hands are dirty. Look at that. That's days of cleaning this thing. That's what that is. But it works pretty good and moves really smooth. So I like this, but this marks, or the inscription here, whatever, the marks that they put on this label are not very deep. And that's the case with almost all the graduations on this machine. That's one fault to this machine, is I think that the inscription or the depth could be deeper. Let me show you another thing I don't like. All right, another thing that I don't like is that you can't zero your dial here. There is no mechanism for zeroing these. If you run up and bump your cutter, then you better call that zero, because there is no way to reposition these handles. They're fixed. So that's another thing I don't like about it. And all the inscription, or the lines, the graduations are real shallow. But one way that I make those stand out a little better is I use a scribe, and I just go in their original lines and clean them out real good. Now this takes a while on a whole machine, but it definitely makes a difference. I've already done these, but I just go around and clean them all out, every little mark. Takes a little while, but makes them stand out a little better, especially when they're thin and small like these lines. All of these marks, you couldn't even see these when I got this machine. So I've went over them all, just like I said, the whole machine, and cleaned them out. These got some dirt back in, but I went over them once and cleaned them out. But rubbing on this thing, I've got grit and grime back in them. But you can see how much that helps just to clean those out. Makes them stand out a lot better. Even though they're shallow, they if you spend a little time, you can clean them out, and they just look better when they're nice and clear. So I spend a little time doing this, and in the end it's worth it. Alright, yes, I pulled this table up, took the 2 pins out, or 2 set screws out on the sides here. It's this one, and then the other one. And I had a couple of these little pins in here that hold on a central pin here in the center. The lower portion of this table, let me bring you up here and show you what I found. Alright, this is the big pin, and it kind of fell down in here. I don't know how good of an idea it was to pull this off with the lower portion of the table on, but I'm not seeing any real wear. I mean, I'm really, pleasantly surprised at everything that I've found so far. A little grit and what you would expect, but for a grinder, I think that's pretty good. I'm not seeing any real wear. This is all flat here. I'm not seeing any real wear. I can't feel it, although looks can be deceiving. But But I'm pleasantly surprised, actually. You know, when you get an old grinder, you never know what you're going to get. They tend to eat themselves. Let me get this in frame a little for you. This is the bottom of the table, and this is all flat, and I'm not seeing anything. Nothing that shows me, you know, you'd be able to see it here, where this is the bearing surface, and then this is just the bottom of the table. This is all one flat surface, and other than, you know, some oil staining, nothing. So that's a good sign. You know, looks can be deceiving, but so far so good. I mean, that's pretty nice. Let's see if we can get this lower portion of the table off and see the ways of this machine. Now I'm going to have to take off. Let's see. Get my junk out of the way. I think I'll have to take this off, because I'll have to, I think that it'll just come off, because it will come out of track if you don't have this on, the stop, and you move the table all the way in one direction, it comes out of the rack, and you got to push it back on. So I may be able to just slide it completely off, but I'm not 100% for sure. Because there's no give or anything. It does have the little, that crunchy sound. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Now that's just two little metal shields in here. I had them out, I bent them, and you can feel them. I bent the little tab and pulled them out and cleaned them. And while it was out, I moved it, and it was, you know, really smooth. So. Okay, it's out there. Yeah, see, I'd done this earlier, just pulled it back like this and looked at the ways, and they look pretty good. Let me see if I can get this table off, and I'll get you a better shot. Here's my main pivot pin for the upper portion of the table. Yeah, there it goes. Easy enough. Huh. Alright. Let me get you a better shot. Well, I don't think that looks very bad at all. A little dirty. Let's see. It's just wicks that go down into the oil. Wicks that soak it up and put it onto the ways. A little dirty. I have to pull them wicks out, clean them, and change the oil in this thing. But I'm not going to go through all that right now. I don't have the stuff to do it. I need to get some WD-40 or some something to soak these wicks in. They feel good and soft. Yeah. Oh, that's neat. They got little springs under them to push them up against the, here's the little metal things I was talking about. They will slide out without removing the table. But look at that. Let me get you in here and show you that. Check out under them wicks. Get my fat hand out of the way. These little springs. They just push up on that wick, and they're dirty. We'll have to definitely take this off and clean it. But I'm not like I said, not ready for that right now. But that's neat. Just spring-loaded wicks. I've never seen nothing like that before. Even on the V-ways. Feels the same, I'm not sure. Yeah. Same, little springs. The wicks are working, see, they're soaking up oil, so pretty neat. I'm assuming these are original machine lines. They don't look, I mean, what would have done that? So let me get you back a little bit. I am seeing a couple little score lines there, but nothing major. I mean, I'm not seeing, you wouldn't be able to see this wear very easily if it had a lot of it. You'd have to measure it, but I'm not going to go through that right now. But let's get you. But it looks pretty good. I mean, you know, I would expect most of the wear in this machine to be, you know, probably on these ends. And I mean, this looks like original, you know, original machine surface right here. And same on this one. But the ends do look like, you know, they're definitely, it's a used machine. It's well older than me, but from what I'm seeing here, it looks, you know, in good used condition. So let's look at the bottom of the table. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but it does have some wear in it. But I can see the original cross-hatching in it. I mean, most everywhere, especially in the, you know, the middle, but I would expect it to be wore out here on the ends a little more, and it looks like it is. It does have some wear in it, but it's not that bad. It doesn't, I mean, visually, you know, like I said, I haven't put a indicator on anything, but let's get you a little different angle. Alright, you can see all these marks, but they do get a little light in this area here. Let me get you down. And I can barely make them out, but I can't really feel it, but that don't mean much. But I think it's minimal. You know, it does have some wear in it, which I completely expected, but I really didn't expect it to be this good. I'm pleasantly surprised with that. So there's you a look at the bottom of the table and the heart of this machine, really. One good thing about this little machine is that it's small enough that you could do a rebuild on it fairly easy, with not, you know, elaborate, massive straight edges and stuff, or a monster plate. So that's a benefit to this. If we do find that it has a lot of wear in it, we can always rescrape these, and I think it'd be a good little project. But, you know, I'm not going to scrape something that don't need it. It's a lot of work, so we'll have to, you know, put it together, do some grinding on it, and see what our results are. And one thing that I wanted to do was, before I took this thing apart like I just did, I wanted to make sure it was fairly clean, because you could transfer a lot of dirt and grit into these just by taking it apart and handling it. So I'm trying to, you know, keep everything as clean as possible. And while I got this table upside down, this is the coolant exit port, and it's a 1/4 MPT, but it's full of, you know, grind and grit. So I'm just going to run a tap in it and clean it out while I got it upside down and off. I've been running taps in any of the holes that you know, are dirty, just to clean it all up. Nothing's worse than sticking a, you know, Allen screw or Allen wrench into a completely packed full head. So I've been cleaning them out, and then chasing some of the really dirty threads. And I mean, you can see that's just in the threads of this. You know, clean machine's always nicer than a filthy, dirty one. So I'm gonna I'm going to blow this out, or not blow it out, I'm just going to wipe it out with a rag, and then we'll go and put this table back on, because I'm not ready to clean out that oil reservoir and wicks. Here's a little better look at the top portion of the table where it sets and rotates on the lower portion. And you can see where it makes contact, but I'm not seeing anything excessive. It does. It's not brand new, but I'm pleasantly surprised. I mean, that could be really bad, and this would cause that table to tilt quite a bit, if it wasn't good and flat here. But look how clean that is underneath there. Well, of course it probably is. This stuff don't see much abuse, but I've noticed on this machine that it's been painted before, but it looks like a professional job, and it's possible that this machine could be a factory refurbish, but at one point or another, I don't know that. I have no evidence really to support that, and no way of finding out that I know of, but it's possible. I'm pretty happy with this. Alright, now I had mentioned that this thing didn't have any gibs in it. I looked on the inside, I didn't see any gib, and this is a roller that sits on top of that rack and pinion. The main handle turns here, and it's got a knob here down here, and I thought that was maybe an oil pump, or I didn't know what it was because it had a lot of oil around it. But what that does is that pulls that table down against the ways of the machine. That's a pretty neat little design. That's all it does. Just this little knob pivots this little arm, pulls down against the top of that rack, and holds the table down on the machine. That's pretty basic, but if it works, it works. So it's pretty neat. This thing needs a good cleaning, everything. But like I said, I'm not ready for that yet. I need to get some supplies. I don't know what type of oil this thing takes. I don't know, anything really. I wonder what year this machine is. It really looks like an older style machine. This machine could be a lot older than I think. I'm guessing this machine's somewhere in the probably 50s to early 80s, but I could be wrong. And like I said, it's had some paint work. Some of the labels were painted on, but it doesn't look like some guy with a rattle can did it. It looks like a fairly professional job. So that's what made me think. And its condition makes me think that it's possibly a refurbished model, but I don't know that. But let's get the table back on this thing. Alright, now I got everything wiped off. Pretty good. It's easy enough. And that's easy. Most machine tables are not that easy to put on. That's enough. Well, guys, I believe that, I know that I definitely feel like that I understand this machine a lot better over the last couple days. Really, it's pretty a simple machine, or pretty simple of a machine, but there's a lot going on, and a lot of things that, you wonder what they are. You really find out, how they function when you actually take it apart. So taking this thing apart and cleaning it has really, gave me a much better understanding of how this thing works and what everything's for. Hopefully next week we can pull this table back off. It's pretty simple. And pull them wicks out, change the oil in this machine maybe if we can get the oil that this thing requires. And if any of you guys know, chime in and let me know. It's probably just a light machine oil, a Vactra 2 or something, 1 or 2, something like that. But I don't know that. There is a brass bushing in here that I've seen, so it'll have to be a brass safe lubricant. So thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed this little look, because that's really all we did. Maybe some cleaning and a little explanation as to what I think some of these things are. So thanks for watching. If you haven't, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking on my little guy up here and hit the bell for notifications. And as always, I'll see you next time.